Today I'm going to be working on a 2010 Mini Cooper S convertible.
The truth.
Today I'm going to be installing a new oil filter housing gasket and a new supply oil line for the turbo. Before I get started, please know that this is a very labor intensive job, so watch the video and then decide if you really want to commit to doing this. This is the part number for the oil filter housing gasket. This is the part number for the new oil feed line as well. I'll be sure to link both of these down in the description below. First things first, you want to go ahead and pop the hood. Jack up the car and secure it on some jack stands if you don't have a lift. Once you have it safely on some jack stands, we're going to go ahead and remove both front tires. So next we're going to remove both of these. You just turn them counterclockwise and they come right out. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, but there goes one. You want to take out both of them. Let's get that one as well. And do the exact same thing on the other side of the car too. Now we're going to be taking off all these little fasteners in here, at least on the front side. Sometimes you have to pull on the fabric just a little bit as you're unscrewing. Just going to hold the outer ring steady as the inner ring screws with the screwdriver. Once you get all those out, we're going to pull back on the material here so we can access these little body panel clips. See if I can show you on the camera. Little body panel clips right here, and there should be another one up here. We're going to be popping both those out here in just a second. So next we're going to disconnect this part of the fender from the bumper. So what you do is you pull out just a little bit right here and then bump it at the same time, and it's going to come loose like that. Now up underneath, we're going to take out the Torx bits that's on these corners, and then there's a few of the plastic clips along the way. We're going to pop them out as well to take the bottom part of this front bumper off. Those Torx bolts are a T25. So next we're going to be taking out the headlights on both sides. It's going to have 4 bolts. They're all 10 millimeter. There's one down here, up top, right up top over here, and then right down to the front back in here. Now well, you can see it for that one. And the passenger side's going to be the same way. You take both of those out, and you're going to disconnect your lights as well. That way the whole assembly can come all the way out. Be mindful, all the bolts are the same length except for this one right up here. It's significantly shorter. Next we'll be taking off these 4 Torx bits. They're all T30s. Next is going to be these 4 13 millimeter bolts right up here, and the other ones are right over here. Next we're going to open up this little compartment here, disconnect this cable. Just kind of pops out of the slot. We can go ahead and move it aside, get it up out of the way, and close this guy back up. Now finally, there's 3 10 millimeter bolts. 1 on that side and 2 on this side we're going to have to disconnect as well. Now I'm also going to pry underneath it with a screwdriver just to release it so I can fit it through this hole when I go to lift this bar up out of the way. Now with all that taken off, we can go ahead and remove this crash bar. Now I couldn't get this out from the crash bar itself with these little pins being in the way. So what I did is I just kind of draped it over to the side, making sure I did it very gently not to scratch the paint. And what I might do is put a towel in between the crash bar and the bumper as well, just to make sure I don't scratch it while I work, but it should be out of the way enough. There we go. I just put a towel just to kind of stop it from scratching if I move things around on accident. Next, you have to get these little clips out. There's these little tiny tabs right here you gotta pop. Kind of push down and they pop out. And then you got these that you have to almost squeeze together, or use a long screwdriver to kind of push it. But there's 4 of them across the way. There's 2 in the middle, and there's 1 on this side as well, along with this little clip that you also have to push down. And the 4th one is right back there. You can kind of see it. But I've been using a long screwdriver just to kind of poke at them and then pull the front grille at the same time. So once that comes off, now we can access these Torx bits right here and here. They are a T25. Alright, so looking where the light used to be, there is a 10mm bolt right here, and there's a Torx bolt right here. But the only way to access them is this way. So what you're gonna have to do is go up underneath. Try and show you. Up underneath the fender here, and there's the Torx, and the 10mm is right above it. It's kind of hard to see with the camera, but you have to pretty much pry back this as you get your ratchet up in here as well. I've seen some people take this fender more off. I'm gonna try and leave mine in place and see if I can't do it that way. Now it was a pain, but I was able to get it with a Torx T25 and then a 10mm ratcheting wrench. I was able to get the wrench in this way and just kind of ratchet it, and the Torx bit I had to go up underneath the fender and do it, but it is possible without taking the fender apart. Now all those are out, we're able to remove our front bumper. Just be cautious, there are connectors for the lights and other connectors up underneath, so as you're pulling it off, just kind of disconnect those as you go. Now it took me just a minute, but I did get all the lights disconnected, so now I can pull the bumper all the way off and set it aside. Now on each side, there's going to be 3 13mm nuts. We're going to have to be taking off the front crash bar here. Now back up underneath the car on the passenger side, you're going to have to remove these Phillips head fasteners. If I can get it. There it goes. You're just going to unscrew a little bit, and there's another one in the back you have to get as well to remove this plastic cover. And there it is off the car. Now back up underneath the car, you've got 4 of the 16mm bolts we're going to be taking out. 2 of them are right here. 2 are going to be on the other side. I already took them out. Now before we pull this front end out, we're going to have to disconnect a couple things, like this HVAC tube right here. You just kind of pop it open. I don't know if I can do it one-handed, but you just pop open the little quip so it frees the HVAC tube here. And then we're also going to, I'm going to disconnect the coolant reservoir here, and I'm also going to have to disconnect the air intake pipe from this little plastic vent it's hooked to right here. You can kind of see right along in here, it connects the big tube to this little, I guess, spacer, you can call it. So we have to pop that off. Now I'm just going to use a dowel and stick it in this hole right here. And I've got a little wing nut I'm going to put on the back side. You can do it this way, or if you can get the right size thread, you can actually thread it into this hole. And you'll still need a dowel or something, but you'll be able to thread it in versus what I'm doing where the wing nut on the back side holds it in place. Because we're going to be pulling out the front end, and it's just going to kind of rest on this dowel. Now before I pull the front end out, I'm going to go ahead and set this back on top of the engine. Just kind of leaving the cables loose. Just so when I start pulling this front out, it doesn't try and fall where it was. Also go ahead, loosen this band clamp up and disconnect this connector right here. Maybe if I can do it with one hand. Anyway, disconnect the connector right there, take the band clamp off because this whole piping is going to slide with the modular front end. You know, man, this is not an easy process. I'm just working one side then the other, one side then the other, just kind of back and forth, inching it out. So fucking easy. Before you get it too far pulled out, go ahead and disconnect this sensor right here. It's pretty much right underneath this HVAC line. Now that we got the front end pulled out some, we've got plenty of room to work down in here. I'm gonna go ahead and start by taking off my oxygen sensor up top. I'm gonna be using a 7/8 crow's foot to be taking it off. Now we're gonna have to remove this little 10mm bolt right here for the oxygen sensor wiring bracket, because it will be in the way for getting to some of the bolts we need in just a second. Once you got that out, go ahead and just set it aside. Once we have this tucked up out of the way, we're gonna go ahead and start working on these heat shield bolts. There's 5 of them, 3 across the top, 1 down in the front. I don't know how well you can see it. And there's 1 over here on the side as well. And they're all 10mm. Now we can remove our heat shield. Maybe, it'll cooperate. Oh, I missed a bolt. There's actually 6. I don't know how well you can see it. Right there is the 6th one. Alright, now that the 6th one is out, we can go ahead and remove our heat shield. Just take some finagling to get it off of here, but it's coming. Come on. There it goes. Now we're going to be hitting these 3 studs for the turbo with some penetrating oil, just going to help them break free. Now while we sit and let that do its magic, we're going to go ahead and crack open the cap on the coolant reservoir, because we're going to be crawling underneath the car and opening the coolant line. So now we're going to head up underneath the car with our bucket to catch any of the coolant that's going to be pouring out. Alright, next we're going to use a pair of pliers to open this clamp right here. It's right here. I'm just working on the back side. But you're going to squeeze the clamp together, get it up out of the way, because we're going to be separating this plastic piping from the rubber hose, and we're going to be dumping coolant into our bucket down below. Now we're just going to let it hang there for a while and drip. So next I'm going to be popping up the little heat shield cover here. Just kind of pries up and pulls out. If I can get it to come out. Come on. I don't know why mine snagged. Hold on, let me see if I can figure it out. There she goes. But you want to save this, go ahead and set it aside. And now we'll be taking off this turbo feed line bolt with a 17mm. Be sure these little brass washers come off with it. There's 1 on each side. See, this one's stuck right down here. So I'm gonna have to grab a screwdriver and pick that one off. Now we're back up underneath the car to get the 10mm bolts that hold on the heat shield. There should be 4 of them. Should be 1, 2, if I can see it. Way up there, 2, and then on the other side there should be 2 more. So we'll go ahead and remove those, and then we pull the heat shield out from the top side. Now that we got those bolts holding the heat shield on, go ahead and start removing this guy. Maybe. There we go. There it goes. Kind of. Alright, that definitely took 2 hands to get it all the way out, but I was able to get it removed. So go ahead and just set it aside. Next, we're going to be taking off the oxygen sensor down here. And I'm going to be taking off this 16mm bolt right here that holds this clamp on the exhaust. Ugh. So just above this clamp, we've got 4 13mm nuts we're gonna be taking off. There's 1, 2, and there's 2 more. I don't know how you can see it. The third one, and then a 4th one right here. But they're all 13mm. They're holding on the bracket for the downpipe. Now back on the top side, we're going to be taking off the 3 bolts for the downpipe coming off of the turbo. They are all 13mm. Now I got my 2 bolts out. I'm just getting the 3rd one out now. In hindsight, probably should have left the top one as the 3rd one. Done the other 2 first, but either way. So what I'm having to do is hold the catalytic converter down here near the bottom as I use my other hand and spin this bolt out. That way the whole thing doesn't drop right out of the bottom as soon as I take that bolt out. Alright, now that our catalytic converter is out of the way, we got 2 10mm bolts we got to take off right here, and it's kind of hard to see right there. A 13mm right here. And on the other end of this bar, if you follow it up, there's a 10mm right behind here. You have to get a like a ratcheting wrench on to take that off to get this swing arm out of the way. Now that the cross beam and those 2 10mm have been all removed, this back heat shield should come right out. Maybe. There it goes. And go ahead and set it aside as well. Now we're going to be taking off the other end of our oil feed line, which is right here, and it's also a 17mm, just like the top side was. Now it also has 2 of these little brass washers. Let's go ahead and set them aside. Then we're going to feed our feed line, no pun intended, down and pull it out through the bottom side. Now we're going to pull our feed line down. If I can get it one-handed, probably not, but we'll feed it down to get it out through the bottom side. It took a lot of maneuvering to get it up out of there, but did eventually get it out. We'll be replacing it. A lot of times these seals right up here go out and start causing leaks. So I'm just kind of nipping the problem in the butt beforehand since I'm in here anyway. So we do have a brand new one we're going to be putting on. It's a braided flex line. So it should be a lot easier to get down in there than this fixed hard line. All right, next we're gonna be taking off that pinch clip for the oil return line. You can kind of see it. Let's see if I can point to it right there. Now we can go ahead and start taking off the 4 8mm bolts to hold this housing on. My ratchet's on one of them right now. There's another one slightly above it. A 3rd one just on the bottom down here. And there's a 4th one kind of tucked behind this oil drain hose for the turbo, but you can see it from the bottom. I'm gonna go ahead and take off the harder 2 first, the top and the bottom one. Then I'll worry about these 2 on the side. As soon as you try and move this housing though, it's gonna start dripping oil and coolant all over the place, so be sure you have a bucket ready underneath. I'm gonna empty this bucket just so I have a clean, full one to put underneath there. Now that we have all 4 bolts taken off and our buckets positioned underneath, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pry on it a bit. See if I can't get this thing to break free. There it goes. And we can move our bucket to reposition. But it's gonna do this for a little bit. So go use the bathroom, go get a drink, whatever you need to do while you let this thing drain. All right, might be a little dark, but so we separated this. It bled out as much as it could. So I'm gonna go ahead and take a rag. I'm gonna clean up the metal surface on this side. Then we're gonna go from underneath and clean out the gasket on the other side here, the part that dislodged itself from the car. I'll show you once I get it out what it looks like and the new versus old. I'm gonna be using a little pick tool like this to get that gasket out. Here's a view from the bottom side of the gasket we're gonna be taking off. It looks pretty bad from what I can see so far. So good thing we're taking it off, and obviously it was leaking. But I just wanted to give you a quick view of what we're gonna be getting out of here. All right, so we got our old gaskets, we got our new ones. The new kit came with a few extras, which I won't be using in this video, but it's nice that they actually supplied them. So we can go ahead and set those aside. We're just gonna be using these two. But these ones are like super hard. Really hard to like squeeze together, where this is obviously nice and soft rubber. So yeah, good thing we're replacing it. Obviously it was leaking, lost its sealing capabilities over the years. When putting the new gaskets in, just look at your orientation of the outline where the old ones used to sit in the grooves, just to make sure you get it in there correctly. Now that we got our new gasket on, we're gonna go ahead and put it back into place. Then we'll go ahead and send our 4 10mm bolts back in. Now that we got all those 8mm tight, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall our oil feed line. Be putting the new one on there. But if you have the old one, you'd feed it up from the bottom, but I'll show you how to put the new one in just a second. Here's a real quick side-by-side with our old oil feed line and our new one. The new one comes with these new little bolts that do come with new little brass washers on there. So you'd be putting one on top, one on bottom, just like the old ones were when going through these. But these ones give you a little bit more mobility with this extra kind of connection on there versus what used to be on there. So first, we're just gonna hand tight this guy right on here. Remember, have the one washer on the bottom and one on top. But we just want to get this guy started. There we go. That way we don't lose any washers while we move things around. And next, we're gonna be attaching this end to this guy right here. I don't know how well I can do this one-handed, but I'm gonna try and feed it down behind this little, I don't know how well you can see it. There's a little heat shield plate right there, and then it's gonna come out the bottom down here. Once you got it fished down, you can see my line hanging out here. I'm gonna go ahead and install this side into the hole that it came out of, and then we'll attach the braided line to the skinny edge right here. Once you get the top and then bottom fitting on, go ahead and tighten them both up. All right, now that we get the engine sealed up, I put my bucket back underneath. What I'm gonna do is hit it with some brake clean and just kind of clean up a lot of the residue from where it was leaking at. Now we're just gonna be working in reverse order. So first thing we're gonna do is put our heat shield back in, and then we're gonna attach the brace that goes right in the middle up to the back side of the turbo. All right, go ahead and reinstall the little heat shield here. Just kind of slides down and then it'll clip into place over top the new line. Next, we're gonna slide our exhaust down in here again. Make sure you don't hit anything as you go. And we're gonna reinsert the 3 bolts, just put them hand tight for now, up top. And then we'll be working down at the bottom to get it all matched up down there as well. All right, next we're gonna be reinstalling our clamp. You just have to push the exhaust back together, spread this clamp apart, get it up over the seam, and we're gonna run our bolt and nut back through. Next, we're gonna be reinstalling these little brackets that go right up here. You have to have the exhaust loose just a little bit, because this bolt has to drop down through the hole. There's gonna be one on this side too, but it just kind of fits up into place, and then the bolt drops into the hole. When it comes to these nuts, these kind of longer ones go horizontally, and these shallower ones go vertically. All right, next I'm gonna be reinstalling the oxygen sensor right into place. Kind of untwist it a few times. That way when you start twisting it in, it straightens out the wires. All right, now we're gonna reinstalling this heat shield. So you're gonna drop it down from the top. I did need 2 hands to take it out earlier, so probably gonna need 2 to get it back in. But it's gonna go down and it's got 4 mounting points, 2 on each side. After you got that one all tight, we're gonna go ahead and reinstall this heat shield as well. Just kind of slides over top here. Let's see if I can do it one-handed. Now that it's in place, there's 6 of these heat shield bolts that hold it in place. There's 3 along the front as well. And then we'll be putting in the oxygen sensor and the connector right down here. Next, we're gonna reinstall this bracket right down here. I left my little bolt in place. It's an 8mm. And then when you reinstall your oxygen sensor, it's a 7/8 socket or crow's foot like I have to get it tight back on there. All right, before you can push the modular front end back on, you have to go down below and make sure that everything is still lined up right up in here. So this one's still on, but as you can see, this one has come off of the subframe. So we're gonna have to make sure it gets back on there before we start pushing it all back together. All right, once you get your modular front end pushed back in, these 4 16mm bolts should line right back up. So I just got them in there hand tight so far. I'm gonna go back and hit them with a wrench in just a second. Now that that's tight underneath, we can go ahead and put this back on. Remember, it's got the bolts that bolt in back here. I'll reattach this here in just a minute. But it's also got the bolts here, some plastic clips to hold the washer flow together, and then the Torx bits that go in here for the hatch releases, and it's the same on the other side as well. And we're gonna adjust this clamp to get it back onto the hose here. Also, don't forget to tighten down your coolant reservoir tank, and we're gonna reinstall our little ball into the hood release latch here, close that up, and secure it back down. Next, go ahead and install the nuts on the modular front end. There are 3 of them. There's gonna be 1 on top and 2 on the bottom. All right, now we're gonna reinstall the front bumper. Just be careful around these corners, getting it on just so it doesn't scratch up anything. And then just kind of rest it onto the modular front end as you slide it slowly into place. After the lower half of the bumper's on, go ahead and tighten up the 2 Torx on each side. And then I'm gonna reinstall the Torx bit that goes on the left side over here, and the 10mm that goes right up here as well. Next, we're gonna put our headlight back into place. It's got the 4 bolts that hold it in. Second one goes there, 3rd one, and 4th goes right down in there. But also don't forget to plug it in on the back here as well, so your lights actually work. Something to make sure of when you're doing this is that this plastic piece sits on top of the fender, and that your short little stubby bolt is the one you use up here on the side of the fender, not one of the long ones. Now when putting the front grille back on, it's just got these little snaps. They go right back into the slots where they came out of. I don't know how well you'll be able to see it on camera, but it just kind of snaps back into place. And then we'll secure the top side here with the little plastic snap pins. Something I forgot to do before I fully installed the front bumper, so learn from my mistakes, is plug in these connectors to the fog lights that are up here. They're both right up there. Should be able to get to them pretty easily through the fender well. On the underside of the bumper, we're gonna reinstall the Torx bits. There's gonna be 1 on this side and 1 on that side as well, and then a couple of the plastic clips right in the middle, but it's gonna be on the very bottom of the front bumper. Here's your Torx bit, and here's one of the clips, and then another one, and there's another clip, and then another Torx. So it's got this belt guard under tray we're gonna reinstall. It just kind of screws into place up here. See if I can get it to focus. It's got this little metal retainer it screws into on here, and then it screws in on the back over here. Just don't forget to do that. Now up underneath the fabric here, we're gonna reinstall the 2 clips. One of them goes right here. The other one goes right up here. And they are the clips that look like this, if the camera will focus. Now you're gonna go ahead and push the fender liner back into place. And we're gonna put in the 4 screw type tabs back into the 4 holes on each side. And they're just gonna push back in. All right, now we're gonna twist these back into place. It's just got the 3 alignment tabs. So you just line them up with the open spots of the fender and give them a twist. And there's the one up there as well. Be sure to top off your oil and your coolant. So when you go to bleed your coolant, you're gonna have this open. You're just gonna be kind of topping it off with coolant as you go. But there is a little bleed port right down in here See if the camera will focus. It's right there at the tip of my screwdriver. And you're gonna crack that open and just gonna let air pour out of there until you get coolant coming out, and then you can close it back off. But at the same time, remembering to keep topping this off at the same time. Right after you open that screw, you can see your coolant level in the reservoir start to drop. Go ahead and top it off. Once you got a steady stream of coolant coming out, go ahead and tighten it back up. Don't over tighten it though, but get it where it's good and snug. Finally, don't forget to close up your cap. So let it run for a few minutes as well, just to check, make sure you don't have any more leaks coming out. And so far, mine is not leaking, so we did everything right. Next, we're gonna go ahead and put our wheels back on, and then we'll be taking out the jacks and lowering the car back on the ground. Well, I hope this video helped. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section below and I'll try and answer them as soon as I can. If you like the music that was in the background of any of these videos, I'll put a link in the description to the artist's SoundCloud.